Hi, 7th and 8th grade. We're getting back into chapter 23, Which Way America. We are starting on note 91, which we finished up on last time, but this time we're starting there because I want to run into the lecture. So you already should have 91 filled in, but if you don't, fill it in right now because that's where we're starting. Okay. I was going to make a note of it, and I don't have a pencil on me. Oh, shame. Okay, here we go. So we talked yesterday or last time that Bush sought re-election in 1992 on a platform of traditional values. The idea that if you want something, you need to work for it. The idea that if you have a home of your own, you should be able to run that home the way you see fit. You should be able to raise your children the way you see fit. Put them into good schools. You should be able to choose which school they go to and what they're learning in that school. So a lot of that was traditional values. Free enterprise. If you see something that needs to happen in the marketplace, you can actually provide that. He also really pushed for patriotism, that's love of country, and a strong military defense, which is a little bit of a flip-flop from what he was doing at the end of his first term. At the end of his first term, he was trying to get Congress to stop passing so many tax bills. The idea that they would try to spend more and more money, and the way they get that money is by raising taxes. And he didn't want to raise taxes, and they were constantly pushing for, well, we need to spend this money here, we need to spend this money here. And so to try to make a way for money to still be available for all the programs being passed by Congress, he cut the military budget, thinking that money that was normally going to the military, because that's the way it was set up under Reagan, that he would use that money instead to pay for all the other programs that the Congress is passing. What ended up happening, however, is more and more people were put out of work because when he cut the military, bases closed, not just in other parts of the world, but here in the United States too. And so a lot of American towns ended up going bankrupt because they lost the big support of having a base near them where the people who lived on that base would go into the town and they would spend their money there. They would get paid on the base, they would go into the town, and that's where they, went shopping and got their hair cut and, bought presents for people and went to movies for entertainment. They went to churches. So the money was really important for people who lived in those towns to have those bases right nearby. Okay, so now that he did that, he had a lot of people in the Republican side who were like, why would you do that and then turn around and say you want a strong military defense? So you're just going to start spending that money again? What does that mean for us? Are you going to reopen the bases? It was very confusing. And as a result, he's going to lose a lot of his traction from the conservative side. He's going to be running against William, who's going to go by his nickname, Bill Clinton. He was the governor of Arkansas, and he was an independent candidate. There was an independent candidate who was also running named Ross Perot. He was a billionaire from Texas. Both of them worked together to campaign on an imaginary economic crisis. Now, the economy was not great, but it wasn't at the crisis point that these two were saying it was. Now, Bill Clinton had on his desk a little sign made for him that said, "It's the economy, stupid." And that was written for him by one of his advisors, a man who now works at Fox, or at, I think it's CNN or MSNBC, but his name is George Stephanopoulos, and he was the campaign organizer for Bill Clinton, and later he became a reporter. So he has some definite contacts with the Democratic Party as a reporter and a journalist. So he came up with this idea to just push on the economy because all of these things had closed because the previous president was trying to get the money for the social programs that were being set up by the Congress at the time. So Bill Clinton ended up winning the election of 1992. He split the conservative vote. He didn't split the conservative vote. The conservative vote split between Ross Perot and George Bush. Ross Perot was a businessman who understood economics, basic economics, which unfortunately a lot of people in politics don't seem to grasp. And he was doing really, really well, and it was making some people, especially those who are diehard Republicans, very upset because it felt like he was pulling votes away from George Bush, and they needed to have a united front behind George Bush to make sure that he won the re-election. Even if they didn't completely agree with him, they didn't want somebody from the other party in the White House. But this independent, Ross Perot, he bought half-hour commercial time on TV, and he did like not PowerPoint slides, but he actually had like I don't know how to say it. He had like flip cards on an easel with a pointer, and he was saying, this is what we're going to do. We're going to, our biggest businesses in the last 7 years has been chicken farms. Seriously, this was part of his thing. And we need to get away from chicken farming and agriculture. We need to get more into software design and hardware design. We need to really embrace the technological side of the United States. And that was really early on when technology was just really taking off. So he was doing really well, and he was pulling votes away from George Bush. And then he ended up getting threatened by some groups who didn't like him, who were on the more liberal side of things. And they started saying, basically, you need to drop out, or we're going to release all this information about your family, which wasn't even true information, but it was very damaging. So here's the thing. You can say a lie about a politician, and it will hit the news. Then the politician has to spend all their time trying to explain why that's not true. And by the time everybody is finally aware that it's not true, the politician has lost all their opportunity to tell you about what they want to do with their job. You know, it's basically a way to get everybody's focus off of what the politician's trying to say, instead just trying to put out fires. So he dropped out of the presidential race, to the dismay of all of his followers. And then after his daughter got married, because it was one of the reasons he dropped out, is because his daughter was about to get married, and he didn't want any kind of rumor mill threat to ruin her wedding, which is kind of a sweet thing, but also a little short-sighted. And then as soon as she got married, he jumped back into the race. But people looked at that and they said, well, you kind of look like you're waffling here. You're going back and forth. Do we trust you to run the country? Are you going to resign from the presidency if somebody says something bad about your family? And so because of that, neither candidate from the conservative side of things was really looked at as being stable. I mean, not waffling. They were seen as mentally stable, but they, you know, which way are you going to go? We don't really know who to trust you. So as a result, Bill Clinton ended up winning the election of 1992, and he ended up winning it by taking some of Ross Perot's ideas. He also rented some television time, but he made sure that he was being interviewed by journalists who were very much in favor of him and his wife. And she dressed up in like a little headband and, you know, very feminine, you know, like jackets and clothes and stuff. And they would sit together and they would talk about their marriage and how lovely it was and how much they loved their daughter. And his wife talked often, you know, gave a little speech about, you know, making chocolate chip cookies and how important that was, and being how much she loved being the first lady of Arkansas. And then after he was elected, she basically flipped on all of that and said, I'm known for more than just making chocolate chip cookies. And being First Lady of Arkansas doesn't mean as much to me as me being a lawyer in my own right. And it was just like she had put on this persona just so to get her husband elected. And he put on a persona of just being this very sweet, kind, generous person who really loved women and wanted to bring women up into an equal rights status. And it turns out that he was actually a harasser, a sexual harasser of a lot of women. So Hillary Rodham Clinton was his wife. She had campaigned with her husband. And after he had taken his oath of office, she declared that she intended to share the responsibilities of the presidency with him. She made that statement out in public, and the people of the United States all kind of took a step back and said, that's not how that works. The First Lady has specific duties in her role as First Lady, but she is not a co-leader with the president. The people of the United States do not vote for the First Lady. They voted for the president. And so when she made that statement, everybody just kind of stepped back and said, you can't say something like that. But because she had been involved in the Washington politics on the side of the law, because she was a lawyer, he ended up giving her some little passion projects. And they were much bigger passion projects than previous first ladies had. Every first lady has a passion project, something that they work on, and they use their time in the role of first lady to carry those out. So, for instance, she comes later. Barbara Bush was all about literacy. Laura Bush, who's going to come later, she was all about library science for children. So they were both on the literacy angle. For Michelle Obama, it was all about school lunches and health for children. And then for Melania Trump, who is our current first lady, hers is about cyberbullying. So those are that's her passion project. For Hillary Rodham Clinton, she didn't want what she considered to be, the typical passion project. She wanted to get involved in the political part of the executive branch. Now, the two of them, when they were voted in, they represented the youth of the 60s in many ways, and there were a lot of pictures shown of them in the 60s and everything. So Bill Clinton had dodged military service during the Vietnam War. He wasn't the only one to do that, but he was one of them. He also participated in anti-war demonstrations in Great Britain. That doesn't mean he wasn't smart. He was a Rhodes Scholar. He went to Oxford for a time. Hillary Clinton was an outspoken advocate of both feminism and abortion rights, and she passed that on to her daughter, who later, in just recent years, has made some really ridiculous statements about abortion rights. She said that she stopped going to church when she was 5. She made that decision because the Sunday school teacher was anti-abortion rights. Okay. All right. If you want to tell people that your Sunday school teacher when you were 5 was talking about, how abortion is wrong, and you made the decision at 5 that no, abortion is a right for a woman, okay, go ahead and tell people that. That's fine. But then she also made a statement that nobody called her on in the press. It was like people after the fact going, did she just say what I think she said? She said that she wished her grandmother had the right and proper access to abortion that women today have. Her grandmother, which would be her mother's mother. So when she said that, everybody just took it to the next logical conclusion. So you wish that your mother had been aborted, which would erase both your mom and you. And it's really interesting because this family has spent so much time in front of the cameras that sometimes they say things that are kind of stupid, but it doesn't always get caught. And it definitely doesn't get caught by the media that loves them, because they are very loved by our current day media. There was a problem, though. Almost as soon as the election took place, there was an investigation that was already open, but it made it into the big time news. It was called the Whitewater Affair. And this was the accusation of Bill Clinton using his position of governor as Arkansas to grant special and illegal favors to a real estate firm called Whitewater Land Development Company. And he and his wife both were involved with this. They got those special favors, and they got kickbacks because they were investors in this as well. So the reason they gave those illegal favors to the real estate firm is because they knew they were going to make money off of it. Okay, there were several scandals during the Clinton administration, and it tainted the image of the Democratic Party, even to this day, especially of the Clintons. Okay, so many Americans started voting for Republican candidates in the 1994 congressional elections, giving the Republican Party control of the Congress for the first time in 40 years. So all of those bills that were being passed in the Congress for, more social programs, those were done with a Democratic Congress. Now, for the first time in 40 years, you're going to have a Republican-led Congress. And part of that was the death of Vince Foster. It turns out that a lot of people who are connected with the Clintons have been found to have committed suicide. One of the earliest ones was Vince Foster, who was part of the Whitewater investigation. He's not the only one, though. Okay, in 1992, in the presidential election, Clinton insisted that his personal life had nothing to do with his ability to lead the country, and that became a resounding philosophy in American culture. It was like, a person who has the talent to lead a country, it doesn't matter what he does in his personal life. Okay, if a man can't control his personal life, he's not going to be able to control a country or lead it in any way. And the reason that Bill Clinton made that kind of statement in the first place is because he was being accused, even during his campaign, of having extramarital affairs. He had multiple extramarital affairs, but it was more than that, because when a person talks about an extramarital affair, that means outside of marriage, they're sleeping with somebody who's not their spouse. Aside from that, the blonde woman you see here, she was willingly in a relationship with Bill Clinton. The woman in the middle, she started to have a relationship with Bill Clinton when she was at a much lower rank than he was. She was an intern. That means she gets paid nothing or a very small token amount. And she was working in the White House as basically just someone who delivers messages, or, she fetches and carries and things like that. But she's learning politics from the ground floor. She's just starting out. And he was the president of the United States, which means he would have the highest rank in the House. And he started sexually harassing her, but in such a way that she thought that he had feelings for her. Okay, so the two of them started having an affair while he was serving in the Oval Office. I mean, in the actual Oval Office. The woman at the far left was sexually harassed by Bill Clinton, but she did not want his attention. And when she rejected him, he punished her by giving her really bad jobs or bad job reviews. And so we see this part of his personal life, but his whole thing was, it's my personal life. It's nobody else's business. But it really was everybody's business, because he was the president of the United States. His relationship with Jennifer Flowers, the girl with the blonde hair, that's between him, his wife, and this woman, who have all just, it was an awful mess, and he shouldn't have been doing that. It was immoral. The woman in the middle, Monica Lewinsky, it is absolutely everybody's business, because he had an affair with her while in the White House and while in his Oval Office at a time when he was supposed to be leading our country, and he was sexually harassing a woman who was much, much younger than he was. We're talking early 20s, and he's in his 60s or late 50s. The woman on the left, you better believe that's everybody's business, because when he sexually harassed her, he was breaking the law. A boss is not allowed to sexually harass his employees or her employees. Not allowed to do that. It's law breaking. As commander-in-chief, Clinton urged Congress to lift the ban on homosexuals in the U.S. military. He implemented a policy that was called Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and then there's a third part that tends to get left out a lot, Don't Pursue. Up until this time, it was very well known that in the military, homosexuals were not supposed to be joining or participating in military. The thought process there was that when things go down, like big bombs, or there's an attack, and people have to share foxholes, like people were afraid that homosexuals might, make a pass at them, which is kind of silly. If there's bombs going on around you, you're not going to be thinking about that. But the idea of homosexuals in the military was frowned upon until Clinton said, okay, here's what we're going to do. If somebody who is gay wants to serve in the military, we're going to say, go ahead. But we are not going to ask you if you are gay. And please don't tell us if you are. And we will not pursue it if we think you are. That was the whole way he was going. He's like, look, if you want to join the military, fine. Just don't tell anybody. Hillary Clinton campaigned heavily for a national health care plan, this is socialized medicine, to be paid for by businesses and their employees, which is actually how a lot of healthcare takes place anyway. But she was really pushing it for every business to be able to pay for healthcare, and that's not really a thing that can happen, because some businesses, like if they're a really small business or they only hire people for part-time work, there's no way they can afford this kind of healthcare. Here's the problem when you have socialized healthcare in any way, when people are compelled to purchase healthcare. The insurance companies that provide that insurance for the healthcare know that everybody has to buy their product and their prices go up. Hospitals know that people have to come to the hospital for certain things and their prices go up. Every time the government gets involved in healthcare, prices go up, which is why we are in such a mess right now. Now, her quote is, we need cost-effective, good luck with that if you're going to have it government run, high-quality healthcare system. People might not pay into the healthcare system outside of their taxes. Okay, your taxes go way up with socialized healthcare, way up. And then when you go to the hospital, you don't have to pay anything out of pocket. That's how they're saying it's free, but you're paying it in taxes. The problem with that is, with that tax money, hospitals tend to get overflooded with this system because everybody knows they don't have to pay out of pocket, so they go to the doctor for every little thing. There's a lot of problems with socialized healthcare, and there's a lot of problems with private healthcare. So we really need to talk about what those problems are and how to fix them. But unfortunately, we have people on both sides who are just so ingrained in their positions that they don't want to talk and compromise. So she said, we need a cost-effective, high-quality healthcare system guaranteeing healthcare to all our people. And then those last three words are the ones that make everybody kind of cringe. As a right. You don't have the right to demand that somebody provide you a service. That is not a thing. You don't have a right to demand that somebody give you something. And healthcare is a service industry. Doctors go to school for a long time to become doctors, and they have a huge medical school bill that they have to pay. Nurses go to school to become nurses, and they work long, long hours. It is not your right to demand that they care for you for free or for what you assume is free. Okay, so when we talk about demanding somebody else serve you as your personal right, that's where we start having some problems with this idea. By the way, her healthcare system plan failed. It never really got off the ground because it was so full of holes and there was no end in sight for how much money was going to be poured into it. So conservatives warned that the average person would pay more in taxes, and become more dependent on government while receiving substandard health care. The hallmark of socialized medicine, which that is true. That is the hallmark of socialized medicine, is that the healthcare tends to be a little more substandard. You also don't have the opportunity to choose which doctor is the best for you because everybody has a different personality. People choose their doctors based on how well they can communicate with somebody. By 1996, this plan was dead. So they said, no, we're not going to choose the Clinton healthcare plan. And it went back to private healthcare system instead. Okay, let's talk about Tax Freedom Day. This is the day in the year when one's earnings stop going for taxes. So if they take all the taxes that you pay throughout the course of the year and add them all up, and then they divide that by your how much money you make per week, they can figure out how long it takes you just to pay taxes in the course of the year. By 1994, the average American would work about half of each year just to pay the taxes. Half of the year. If they took half of a year's paychecks, that would be how long it would. That's how much you pay in taxes. And that's for all kinds of taxes. That's for your income tax, your business tax if you own a business, and for if you are just shopping at the store and you're paying sales tax. That is a lot of taxes. You know we pay sales tax. You do too. If you go to Dollar Tree and you buy a candy bar for $1 because it's Dollar Tree, you don't have to pay taxes on that because it's food. Okay, and in California you don't have to pay taxes on food. But if you go to Dollar Tree and you buy a book, because you're me, or a packet of pens, everybody needs to buy packets of pens, please. So you go to Dollar Tree, you say, you know what, I've been out of red pens since the beginning of the year. Now that school's out, I should probably get some red pens for next year. Wink, wink. You can take that packet of pens up to the cashier at Dollar Tree, and the cashier will beep it, and say, that'll be $1.08. And your response might be, it's Dollar Tree. It should be $1. No, you have to pay taxes on that. So you are paying sales tax for the state of California, which is 8 cents on the dollar. Okay? If you're paying for food, you don't have to pay tax. That was supposed to be a way to help poor people. And then if you are paying for something that's not food, you do have to pay tax, 8 cents for every dollar you spend. That doesn't include, when we talk about all the taxes you pay, you're paying sales tax. And if you're thinking, well, it's okay, I can pay 8 cents on a dollar. Okay, now think about buying a car. How much sales tax do you have to have for a car? Okay? How much extra money are you paying for that car to go to taxes? You also, if you own a home, you're paying property taxes. You also pay fees to drive the car on the street. Okay? Your registration fees. But if we're just talking about taxes here, and fees are taxes, who are we kidding? Then you're also paying local taxes to your local government, so the city of Manning. You're paying taxes to the state government, state of California, and then you're paying an income tax. That's money removed from however much you're making on your paychecks. That's from the federal government. So you're paying a lot of taxes in your lifetime, and you are working about half of your year just to pay those taxes. It's funny because right now I'm reading a book of Greek plays. And I'm reading the play The Birds. And two people run away from Athens because they're sick and tired of being taxed to death. They are the first democracy. We talk about Athens and we're like, it was the first place that had a democracy and it's so great and wonderful. And these two people run away from Athens because they're always being taxed. They have so many taxes because the people who are allowed to vote, because you realize that in ancient Greece with the real democracy, not everybody in Greece was allowed to vote. It was only about a quarter of the people were allowed to actually vote. And they would vote in higher taxes that everybody had to pay, even if they weren't allowed to vote. And so these two people who ran away say, we don't want to pay any more taxes. Can we go somewhere where we have a representative government where we can get rid of the people who are raising those taxes? Hello, we live in a representative government. We can vote some of these people out who are constantly raising taxes. Learn something new every day. Okay. America was losing its goodness. Okay. When we talk about presidential candidates saying, hey, my personal life and how I'm ruining that, how I'm destroying my marriage, how I am being disrespectful to my wife and, embarrassing my child, that's my business. It's not your business. And the media saying, you're right. Absolutely. It's his family's business, not ours. We shouldn't be digging into that. That means that there is a lack of morality there. When someone doesn't stand up and say, you know what, I'm going to love my wife, I'm going to love my children, I'm going to stay faithful to my marriage vows, and I'm going to do my absolute best in every aspect of my life, my public and my private life, that is the goodness we're looking for. So America was losing its goodness. And this is the goodness that Alexis de Tocqueville spoke of in 1831 when he wrote a book called Democracy in America. Now, when he wrote that, the United States was not a republic yet. We were actually a confederacy. We hadn't quite gotten to the Constitution yet. So he wrote this book, America is Great Because America is Good. You know what? I just misspoke. We were a constitutional republic by that time. He misread it anyway and said it was democracy. America is great because America is good. When America ceases to be good, America will cease to be great. Okay? He also wrote, not until I went into the churches of America and heard her pulpits flame with righteousness did I understand the greatness and genius of America. America is great because America is good. If America ceases to be good, America will cease to be great. There was one issue, however, that he had with Americans, and he said America is absolutely wrong on this issue, and if they don't correct it, they will get pulled into hell, and that was the issue of slavery. Okay, but you know what? We did learn from that, and we ended up having a war that abolished slavery in the United States of America. We're one of the few countries who actually fought over that issue. Okay, moral decline in the 1900s included an increase in white-collar crime. These are business scandals. These are people that you wouldn't think of as being criminals, but they're stealing from their companies that they work for. There was an increase in gambling. I remember when the California lottery became a thing, and that was in the 80s, early 90s maybe. And it was presented to the people of California as, you shouldn't be against this because it's gambling. You should think of it instead of all the good it can do. We're going to give 1/3 of every dollar to the public school system here in California. That became the selling point for the California lottery. The way they were presenting it, the schools would be paid for through the California lottery. The schools are still asking for money every single election cycle. So the question is, where did all that money go, people? There was also an increase in greater acceptance of pornography. And again, this is one of those things, what happens in my private life is my private business. You know what, though, this hurts people, because the people who are having their picture taken and being compelled into these poses for these magazines and now online a lot of times, they're desperate people, most of them, who are looking to make money to survive. And that's not okay. It's not okay for someone to express their power over somebody else to make money. Judicial weakness. Judges began to give really light sentences and returning criminals to the streets, and we're seeing that happening a lot more today too. And then there was educational failure. Lots of educational failure. A lot of students discovered that when they graduated high school, were not able to read. That's kind of an important thing. You did need to be able to read, but a lot of kids were just being passed along through school because, frankly, some of them were a little annoying. Some of them had some learning disabilities that they weren't recognized at the time. You had some kids who didn't want to be at school, and they let everybody know it. And it got to the point where the teachers were just like, you know what, just pass them out of my grade. Just pass them out of my class, and you know what, we'll get them out of here. And so people were being graduated without having a strong educational background. And that's just really sad. Okay, we are going to stop right there and pick it up again on Monday. I hope you have a fantastic, fantastic weekend. Enjoy your time with your family, and I will talk to you again Monday. Bye.